Hello, good evening and welcome to Business Live. Coming up tonight, Vice President Dr. Aboagye-Wiafe touts government's prudent management of cedi despite pressures from COVID-19 pandemic. Rice farmers in Ashanti region appeals for milling machine to aid production. Also coming up tonight, watermelon farmers bemoan poor sales due to COVID-19 pandemic. We have the details coming up after the break. Welcome back to Business Life, and you can call me Hajia Sandra Esinam Apenu. And tonight we begin from our summaries, and the Bank of Ghana has begun online payment service for collateral registry system. Details plus more in our summaries.
The Bank of Ghana has introduced an online payment service for the collateral registry web-based system. The move, according to the BOG, is to address the inconveniences associated with the existing prepaid mode of payment. The registry provides a legal framework for credit, improves standards of disclosure of information by borrowers and lenders, prohibits certain credit practices, and promotes a consistent enforcement framework related to credit. Ghana's economy is set to move towards becoming more self-reliant post the coronavirus pandemic. That is according to Vice President Dr. Aboagye-Wiafe. According to him, the Akufo-Addo-led administration's vision for a Ghana Beyond Aid agenda will alter the needed recovery after the pandemic. Speaking at the GBC studios after the 2020 virtual Eid al-Fitr celebrations in Accra on Sunday, Dr. Aboagye-Wiafe said the president has already placed Ghana on a trajectory that allows the country to come out of the crisis relatively quickly. The Center for Socioeconomic Studies, CSS, is urging the disclosure by Chamber of Telecommunications over what it calls a data breach by Kelny GVG on mobile subscribers across the country. This follows an alleged report that government, through Kelny GVG, has requested telecommunication companies to provide it with customers' information and data. In a statement issued by the Center, CSS says it seeks from the Chamber of Telecommunications a disclosure on whether the government of Ghana through Kelny GVG Limited did request from Vodafone, Airtel Tigo, Glo and internet data service providers information on their customers in an unhashed format, such as full disclosure of mobile money transactions of subscribers, dump of merchant codes and self-reference data. The Chief Executive Officer of First Bank Nigeria, Dr. Adesola Adeduntang, has disclosed that banks are currently offering customers access to low-interest funds. In addition, banks have been restructuring the loans of their customers to meet the specific needs of each customer's cash flow situation. Dr. Adesola Adeduntang revealed that banks are also waiving late repayment fees and charges for customers who are able to make loan repayment within 90 days of the original due date.
And those were our summaries tonight. So our major story tonight, the total amount of Ghana cedis in circulation has increased significantly since March last year. Latest data from the Bank of Ghana shows that it went up to hit 15.5 billion cedis. JoyNews has more on what this means for the economy.
The Bank of Ghana data showed that it went up by a little over 3 billion Ghana cedis. That is from March last year to March 2020. There isn't any official reason for this significant jump for now, but I would say it can be attributed to some much improvement with economic activities in the country. This is because the Bank of Ghana has a policy of trying to match the amount of money in circulation with economic activities. This is expected to influence the amount that the Bank of Ghana allows to be in circulation in the country. The data have showed that from January this year to March 2020, the amount of money in circulation has been around 15 billion Ghana cedis. It declined in February and went up marginally in March this year. The same Bank of Ghana data also showed that monies outside the banking system has also increased significantly this year, up from 11.2 billion Ghana cedis to 13.5 billion Ghana cedis. It is however not clear for now how this could impact an inflation rate, despite the fact that the rate in recent times have been fairly low, and whether the Bank of Ghana will be instituting some measures to mop up this amount of money outside the banking system. In terms of advances, or let's say credit by commercial banks in the country, the services sector attracted the highest of 14 billion Ghana cedis, and in the first quarter of this year, Commerce and Finance took the next chunk of 8 billion Ghana cedis. In all, as at the end of March this year, commercial banks in the country have advanced almost 60 billion Ghana cedis to private businesses and government.
Meanwhile, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says government has been able to prudently stabilize the Ghana cedi, notwithstanding shocks from the coronavirus. The pandemic recently resulted in some offshore investors getting out of the bond market, while demand for our traditional exports have seen some decline. But despite all these challenges, Dr. Bawumia told Western Amwa on the Super Morning Show on Joy FM, the cedi has been fairly stable.
Fundamentally, we have managed the cedi much better. By all accounts. We did arrest the runaway depreciation in the cedi, and therefore, if you look at the record in terms of the depreciation of the cedi in the last 4 or 5 years or 8 years, you'll see. That since the MPP came into power, the rate of the cedi depreciation is 50% less than what it was before. That is what the data shows. So it's 50% less. So yes, we have arrested the depreciation of the cedi. We have brought down inflation. We have brought down interest rates. We have brought down the deficit. We have increased growth. We have reduced unemployment. We have reduced the suffering of the people in the context of, paying for electricity. We have reduced the price of electricity.
Watermelon farmers along the Accra-Aflao Highway within the Greater Accra region have expressed discomfort with poor sales. Some who spoke to Joy Business blamed the low sale on COVID-19 pandemic and disproportionate rainfall patterns. Fred Duho visited Sige and Adan and has come through with a following report.
Just like mango, tomato and other perishable goods, watermelon is one of the fruit that floods the markets in season. On the Accra-Aflao Highway, specifically around Sige and Adan in the Greater Accra region, watermelon cultivation is one of their main occupations. Seasonally, women, men and children alike are seen drawing attention of passengers to their heap of watermelon along the road. According to them, the price of watermelon has drastically reduced this year.
It's like there's some disease on the land. That's why some of the watermelon gets rots. Some get overgrown. That's why it's like we didn't get too much rain. 5 cities lay, 3 cities lay, 4 cities, 2 cities, 1 cities.
Look at that. I'm more going
Nyatapeyo. Because of lockdown, this year.
This size of watermelon, previously sold for 5 Ghana cedis, is now selling for 1 cedi, while the biggest size now goes for 10 Ghana cedis instead of 20 cedis last year. Despite the short distance from the capital city Accra to the supplying communities, middlemen are said to be cashing in, as the 10 cedi size of watermelon is sold for 20 cedis in Accra. Aside from the poor rainfall pattern hampering good harvest, some farmers blame the low crop yield on the lack of irrigation system.
It's not good because of the rain, how the rainfall isn't good at all.
And what would you say, apart from the rain, has been the rain is the only challenge you can talk about?
Yes.
So in that case, you need something like irrigation to be able to
if we get it, we can do help us.
Despite these shortcomings, the little harvest for the season is equally going waste. And instead of allowing tons of the fruit to go bad, pigs are having a field day at the expense of a bad market. I am Fred Duho reporting for Joy Business.
Economist Professor Godfred Walkwin is joining me via Zoom for more on this development. Thanks so much for your time this evening, Prof. And if you can hear me, we know the cedi is trading around 5 cedis 82 pesos as of today. And you heard what the Vice President is saying that despite the external factors that we have, the cedi has been fairly stable. If you can hear me, what is your assessment of the cedi's performance so far? Looks like we don't have Professor Godfred Walkwin on the phone lines yet, but we'll try and work the phone lines, and when we get to him, he will answer all those questions about his assessment of the Ghana cedi, as being said by the Vice President, that it's been fairly stabilized by government. But when we get him, we'll bring him back on the line. But moving away from that, all right, so I want to revisit our earlier story about the performance of the cedi, and I have been joined on Zoom by Professor Godfred Walkwin. He is an economist economist. Thanks so much for having you this evening, Prof. And if you can hear me clearly, I was saying that the cedi is actually trading around 5 cedis 82 pesos today. And the Vice President is saying that despite the external pressures on the cedi, we prudently stabilized the cedi. What is your independent assessment of the cedi's performance?
Thank you very much, and good evening to our cherished viewers. I think that the development this year is very, very welcoming. We can take the politics out of it and then say that I think that there's a strategy underlining this performance that we cannot take away from the managers of the economy and also Bank of Ghana, building towards the end of last year when Bank of Ghana had been building its reserves in anticipation of 2020 also being an election year. And to that extent, and again, when you look at COVID-19, the slowdown in import, of course, export also, things are working some way, somehow, of course, driven also by the strategy, and to some extent, you can't take the fund.
Hello, Prof.
So that is what is playing out. The reason, yes.
Yes, go ahead, Prof. I can hear you now. Prof, if you can hear me, you can go ahead with your submission, please. All right. It looks like technology is failing us today, but we'll try and work the lines and get back, Prof, to talk about the performance of the cedi. And I'm told Prof is back now. Prof, you were making a submission before. We had some interruptions there. All right. Unfortunately, we seem to be having problems. We move on now, and rice farmers in the Ashanti region are citing harvesting and threshing as one of the biggest challenges to their works, and they want government to pay critical attention by supporting them to overcome the age-old impediments for improved production. Nana Yaojima visited rice farmers in Ejisu municipality and has come through with the following report.
For local rice, farmers are unable to expand to meet domestic needs. This is against the background of $1 billion annual import bill on the staple. The Food and Agriculture Ministry, through the Planting for Food and Jobs program, targets to make Ghana self-sufficient rice producer. I'm at one of the rice-producing communities of the Ejisu municipality. Against the surface of a partly broken wooden table, dried rice stalk is struck and seeds drop onto a tarpaulin. The manual threshing method, farmers say, is the most difficult process in rice cultivation. Edward Baba explains.
Red and white. And
it is Edward's turn today in the Nobwa system, where farmers come together to help each other in turns to process their produce. For about 21 days, Baba has been harvesting a 2-acre rice farm all alone. He finds the task too tedious for one person, but he has no option because he cannot afford to hire laborers to assist him. The risk, he says, is potential loss of produce if harvest and threshing delay. At least 3,218 farmers cultivate 681 hectares of rice farms in the Ejisu municipality. Under the Planting for Food and Jobs, government has made available high-yielding varieties to farmers. From an average of 2.5 tons of yield per hectare, farmers now target 4 tons. Government-farmer collaboration to introduce threshers and harvesters to farmers could be the game changer. To achieve this, the ministry is introducing farmers to rice farming machinery. Sector Deputy Minister George Odro sheds some light on the initiative.
Especially the southern sector here, the rice valleys are very small areas, so they need small machines so that will enable them to do their harvesting. That is why we brought this machine for them to see. We have about 1,000 pieces we are going to distribute across the country through all the southern sector, the rice valleys, to enable the farmers harvest their rice and use the machine to do the threshing. If we're able to continue as we are doing, possibly by the 2 years that we want to stop the importation of rice into this country will be realized.
From Kumasi for JoyNews, Namaya Ojima reporting.
All right, so earlier we were talking about the performance of the local currency, that is the cedi, and we're trying to speak to Professor Godfred Bogwin. Luckily, we have him back on the phone lines. And Prof, great to have you back again. And so you were making a submission about why we are here, especially when we have some external factors putting so much pressure on the cedi.
Okay, thank you very much, and apologies for the internet connectivity we had earlier.
Accepted.
So, like I was saying, so if you look at even from the beginning of the year, before COVID-19 really showed its ugly head in our part of the world, you could see the performance of the cedi, and you can trace it to some underlying strategy. One is the fact that Bank of Ghana has been intense now building its international reserves in anticipation of 2020 election. Because usually during an election year, the cedi comes under some cumulative pressure, and that becomes an election campaign issue. So that is clear. But of course, when you also look at the slowdown or generally the disruption in the global supply chain, which is also affecting import, but also affecting export. But then you have to look at the balance of where the impact is, and that may also be showing up in the performance of the cedi. But more importantly, if you look at the drop in global interest rates because of some quantitative easing, and then particularly the effect, the containment measures to COVID-19, interest rates are particularly low. And for that reason, those investors who normally will seek early redemption of their investment from Ghana, for which reason could cause the cedi to depreciate, that has also slowed to some extent. Let's also remember that Bank of Ghana has received some inflows to its international reserves from the IMF Rapid Credit Facility and other support. That is also showing up the stability of the cedi. Right. So we will say that there's some underlining to this, and of course you can't take the fundamentals of the economy out of the discussion also. So, but what I want to talk about more importantly is the fact that this is good news for Ghana. Why am I saying so? Because when the cedi is stable, it's good for all of us, regardless of which party you belong to. But more importantly, you realize that any time the cedi depreciates, it also adds to our public debt stock. So when you look at 2019 alone, because 2019, the cedi depreciated, it was one of the worst performing currencies in Sub-Saharan Africa. And that alone added positive 15 billion cedi to our debt stock. So our debt stock went up in 2019 by approximately 15 billion, not because we first debt, but it was simply because of the depreciation of the currency, of course, along the major currencies, the dollar, the sterling, the euro. But if you look at the composition of our debt stock, majority of them are denominated in dollars. So anytime the cedi depreciates hugely against the dollar, it tends to also affect our public debt buildup. So that is how we can talk about it. But the outlook looks fairly stable to some extent.
All right.
To some extent.
And so, I mean, clearly justify the Vice President's position that we've done quite well in stabilizing the cedi. But you spoke about the general global slowdown. Are we out of the woods yet? And for how long do you think that we can come back to a normal position with the management of the economy?
Wow. Even when restrictions are lifted, it takes a while for things to come to prepare. So should be patient in terms of the recovery. And even in Ghana, we ease them in terms of public gathering and all of that. It will take a while for people to actually respond appropriately to pandemic level.
All right, Prof. Unfortunately, we have to leave it here. Technology was not good to us today, but I want to say a big thank you. But we brought you also stories on the agri sector, and it looks like generally we have issues with food glut. Farmers are struggling to find the right markets for their produce, and I've been joined by Anthony Morrison, who is the CEO of the Chamber of Agri Businesses Ghana. Thanks so much, Anthony, for joining me via Zoom. I mean, inflation rate for the month of April was largely driven by prices of food items. So how do you strike the balance of having food glut, i.e. against inflation being high? Unfortunately, I think we are having a lot of issues with our internet connectivity today, but clearly the world will certainly not be the same after COVID-19. And that's all for the program this evening with me, Hajia Sandra Estinam Apeno. I'll be back at 7 p.m. with business. Thanks so much for watching.